It's never easy to raise taxes, and certainly not a tax like the GST. But governance is about making responsible choices, not just popular ones. This government will never take risk with Singaporeans' lives and future. Mr. Pritam Singh, the leader of the opposition, and Mr. Leong Man Wai said the GST increase has made it worse by adding to inflation. In fact, Mr. Singh said the GST increase turbocharged inflation. But let's be clear, as a small and open economy, our inflation was driven primarily by global factors: wars, supply chain disruptions, and rising energy costs. As Mr. Saktiandi Supat noted, even before the GST increase, prices were already going up globally and in Singapore. Indeed, that was the case. In 2022, CPI inflation was 6.1%, 2022. Then, the GST went up by 1 percentage point on 1st Jan 2023 and another 1 percentage point on 1st Jan 2024. What happened to CPI inflation? It moderated to 4.8% in 2023 and came down further to 2.4% in 2024. Where is the turbocharging? Look, I know elections are approaching, but this chamber is not an election rally. Let's not get carried away by hyperbole and have a debate based on facts. The Workers' Party and the Progress Singapore Party appear to be unhappy and displeased that the government is providing vouchers to help Singaporeans with the cost of living. They suggest that the government is relying solely on vouchers to help with the cost of living, but we've never said that. These are temporary help measures. They are not long-term solutions. In fact, they only make up a small part of our overall budget. The cost of living measures and the SG60 package account for about 5% of our budget. A much larger part of our spending is in structural programs. All this will ensure Singaporeans do not just receive help, but are able to stand on their own feet and seize better opportunities for themselves and thrive in a rapidly changing world. As we have repeatedly emphasized, the more durable, the more sustainable way to tackle cost of living is to ensure that Singaporeans enjoy higher real incomes. And that must be supported by a strong economy and productivity gains. Several members, including Mr. Singh, the leader of the opposition, Ms. Hazel Phua, and Mr. Leong Man Wai, questioned the need to increase the GST given our strong fiscal position. I should remind members that we are in this strong fiscal position precisely because the government took the necessary steps early in this term to raise revenues. But if we were to rewind the clock and consider our situation, imagine what our situation was at the beginning of this decade. We were in the thick of battle, fighting COVID. We had no way of knowing when the pandemic would end, how the virus would mutate, how many more new waves of infection would we face, how many more restrictions we have to impose, and how much deeper a fiscal hole we would end up with. But we already knew for sure that spending needs would rise over the horizon. We looked at different ways to raise revenues, including through property and income taxes, but these moves were still not enough to cover the expected increase in expenditure, which was sure to happen. So what should we do to plug the funding gap? That's why we had to consider the GST increase. It was a difficult decision. It was a difficult choice. It's never easy to raise taxes, and certainly not a tax like the GST. But governance is about making responsible choices, not just popular ones. So once there were signs that the economy had stabilized, we decided to proceed with the GST increase. But we also rolled out a comprehensive assurance package, which effectively delayed the GST increase for the vast majority of Singaporean households. Several members I know criticized MOF's fiscal marksmanship. Look, when I started work in MOF decades ago, one of my main tasks was to provide fiscal projections. As an economist, that was what I did. I was one of those who would run the models and churn out the figures. So I know exactly what this work entails and how difficult it is. I will not defend the figures if they are off the mark, but I will speak up for our MOF officers who do this work with dedication and professionalism against any unfair criticisms. Ultimately, a budget is a projection. It is based on the best available information at that point in time. We have to plan ahead. In most other countries, poor budget marksmanship is when a government severely overestimates the revenue it will collect and underestimates its expenditure. But this is not the case in Singapore, where we practice responsible and prudent budgeting. Ultimately, it's not just a matter of good marksmanship or poor marksmanship. It's a question of the right values and the wrong values, the correct fiscal principles and the wrong fiscal principles. And the WP and the PSP may think that we are being overly cautious in our projections, but this government will never take risk with Singaporeans' lives and future. We keep our public finances healthy year after year. We spend within our means, and if there are new or additional areas of need, we raise revenues to meet these new demands. We always ensure that we have enough rather than risk falling behind and falling short. That's the responsible way to steward and manage our nation's finances. We have 60 years of history to show that Singapore has abided by the right values and principles, and Singaporeans can continue to count on this government to continue doing the same.